Hey guys, today we're going to be painting lavender in a loose watercolour style. These are beautiful plants for the summer and the purple is so iconic, but lots of beginners struggle with painting these because they get bogged down in the detail of a big lavender bush. So what we're going to do is isolate a few flowers and leaves and just focus on the detail there. Ready to get started? Alright guys, let's start painting. Now, I'm going to be using some of my favourite supplies today. So, my Winsor Newton Professional paints. I buy these in tubes and just squeeze them out to my palette. This is Legion's Stonehenge Aqua Coldpress paper. I've got it in a little square block here. And then we will be using Princeton Heritage's 4050 round synthetic brushes. I'm going to be mostly using a size 5 for this. So, for lavender, what we're going to want to do is mix up some blues and some purples. So I'm using this Dioxazine Purple and I'm going to be using a little Cobalt blue as well. And we're going to be creating some mixes of that. Also going to be using sap green for the stems and leaves. So first up we're going to paint the stems. So instead of trying to paint a whole lavender bush and getting bogged down in the detail, we're just going to paint a few stems in almost like a little bunch. So we're just going to pick a central point to start from. And then pull out some long stems up there. Now what I'm trying to do here is vary the angle and the height and maybe overlap a little bit up there so that we've got lots of different things going on and they don't all end in a bit of a line. We'll pull one last little one out up here. I'm looking for any bits where they seem a bit samey, and then I'm just going to pull that up a bit more as well. And that one. Okay, now we're ready to mix some purples. So, some straight up Dioxazine Purple here. And then we're also going to add Cobalt Blue for a more muted mix. There we go, and some kind of pure cobalt blue as well for contrast. Now, lavender flowers essentially have small groups of 4 buds along the stem. So we're going to start out with the ones at the tip and just paint a little pair of rounded buds there. And then what we're going to do is carry that on down the stem until we've got our full flower. So we'll add a couple more little buds under there, and then we've got the tips sorted, and we're just going to repeat that, leaving a little bit of a space for the next 4. Rinse that off and then add a lighter tone underneath. I'm probably going to add a bit more purple in there. There we go. And then the next one. So we're creating something that's almost like a little V shape or a little heart shape. And you can see that what I'm doing is changing up the colour mix and the value all the time. Now it's really important to get these to not look just like a big clump. So we need to be adding things with more colour concentration, more paint on the brush, and then with more water as well. Adding a little bit of blue, so that we're constantly changing that up. One of the best ways to do this, if you struggle to get your values really light, is to add a little bit of paint to your brush and then just keep painting and adding water without going back for more colour, and you can start to get some really light values. Just going to make that a bit more purple for that one. A bit more. And what we want to do is allow these little groups of 4 to touch so that they will create nice little bleeds as they go. So we're going to do that away down the stem, and then what we want to do is create 2 little isolated buds towards the bottom because they have a bit of a gap, and then another little set of just 2. So there's the first one. Let's keep going. The 2 at the top are a little bit tighter and smaller, and then they just open up as you go down. I love lavender plants, they're so beautiful. They remind me of being in France, just enjoying the smell and the sight of them in the sun. And using this method, they're actually easier to paint than you would think. I also really like how their little stems can curve as well. If you get a bit like that where you start to get all of the colours and values are a bit of much of a muchness, they're a bit samey, you can go back in with the dry brush and just lift some of that out. You can also reach up with the next set and just allow a little bleed there. Okay, this is starting to get a bit blue, so I'm going to go back in with the rich purple. There we go. And then just keep slowly lightening. Tap some of the excess water off on a kitchen towel. A little bit bluer, and then maybe a little bit of a lighter value there as well. And then I'm going to do the two isolated ones here. This is starting to look really nice. Okay, mix up some more blue in there. Because that starts very purple, we're going to do the next one starting very blue. And rinse that off. You can also add little touches of colour just to the edge of buds if you want to give them a bit of contrast like that. Or to the centre there. And that creates almost a shadow. Do the next set and let that touch. See, I'm not overthinking this. You need to move fairly quickly just to make sure that it's still wet enough to get all these effects, but it also helps not to overthink it sometimes with watercolour, or we end up doing things that seem a bit overworked or a bit forced. One of the easiest ways to practice loose painting and loose floral painting as well, and lots of people ask me this about how you get a loose style. One of the ways that I learned was simply to set myself a little 5-minute or 10-minute timer, and then I would have to complete the piece in that time. And it's a really good way to force yourself to make quick decisions and just kind of have a go and keep it very loose. And you can't really overthink it like that. So if you're struggling to keep it loose, that's a really good tip that I recommend. Go. I'm always running out of colours that I was using halfway through a painting. I never mix enough. It's a really bad habit. Gonna alternate here. I've been doing a lot with the darker two on top, so I'm going to try the darker two underneath. The best way to create contrast and movement in paintings is just to do something a little bit different to what you've just done all the time. And if you get into that habit of thinking, right, what am I doing that could be different? Then you'll soon find that your pieces start to get a lot better because you're constantly thinking about, right, what's the next change that I can make? What's the next thing that I can do differently? And that's where the pieces really start to kind of look a lot stronger and a lot more professional. But it's a tricky habit to get into. I know it takes a lot of practice. You can see I'm just doing the same thing over here. These are essentially, now I look at them, like little butterfly shapes, which if you're thinking about it like that, might help you. I'm also getting a little bit faster. I'm just pushing myself to keep making quick decisions. The great thing about watercolour is that it's easy to fix. If you make a mistake, you can just lift it up with a wet brush or a wet kitchen towel. And if you really don't like it, it's not the end of the world. It's just a piece of paper and you can always throw it away and start again. Lots of people really struggle with the idea that, you know, what they've painted isn't perfect, or they're just not happy with how it's turned out, but that's totally normal and fine and something that happens to everyone, including me. I regularly paint things that I hate, Just don't beat yourself up about it, and come back and paint again tomorrow, and you will really start to see progress then. That's all a little bit faded. These are looking really cute. Now, you can also keep an eye on this. It's really important as watercolour is drying. It fades as it dries and it can get less pigmented. So it's really important to keep an eye on it as it's drying and see if there are any bits where you think, actually I want a bit more contrast in that, and you want to go back over it. There we go, just add a little more dark there. Add those little ones. Okay, I am broadly happy with how that looks. What we're going to do now is add some leaves. Now, lavender leaves are just really long and thin. Not long and thin, they're short and thin. So we just want to mix up some sap green, maybe add a bit of water to get it quite light, and then we're going to use the tip of the brush, touch it to the paper, and then pull out and up to a tip for a leaf there. And I'm going to do it in the other direction. So they tend to have little leaflet pairs. And they go to a little pointy tip like that. And they cross over quite a lot, and that's maybe too dark. Now, the reason I'm keeping this green quite light is that purple and green are complementary colours, which means that they are opposites and they can clash. And they also can make things look a little muddy. So one of the best ways to use them is to make sure that one of the colours is dominant. In this case, it's going to be the purple. So if we keep the green quite muted, then it's not going to distract from the flowers too much. You can add a little bit darker there at the bottom. Okay, I really like how this is shaping up. One of the things I'm going to add just to fill in some of this white space here is a little bit of splatter. It's really easy to do this with watercolour and it adds a really nice effect. So I'm going to mix up a kind of watery-ish mixture. We don't want it too watery because then it will fade, but we don't want it too thick, otherwise it risks leaving kind of streaks and lines in the splatter. And then I'm going to use my hand to cover the green because we don't want to get the splatter into that. And then I'm just going to use my index finger to tap the brush and add a bit of splatter around the edges. And I think that's it. And here's the finished piece. It looks so good. I actually really like how the splatter turned out, and I'm loving all the colour variations with the different blues and purples. If you liked this tutorial, please subscribe. We'll be posting a new one every week from now on. And if you want to share your work with me, you can always post it to Instagram and tag me. I'd love to see what you create. See you next time, guys.